So I'm Elizabeth Warren, and I took very seriously the title of our topic today about making markets be markets. I teach contract law, and I've signed a fair number of consumer credit contracts, credit cards, mortgages, car loans, checking account agreements. So let me tell you what I want. I want a 2-page credit card agreement in big print and plain words. I want something that will tell me what this is going to cost, and I don't want to have to wonder if somewhere in the fine print the interest rates can triple, or if the $29 fee here and the $49 fee there mean that my free card in fact costs me about $300 a year on average. I want a 2-page mortgage. Plain words. I want to be able to compare 4 mortgages and see what they cost and be able to tell which ones are dangerous. I want a 2-page check overdraft agreement. Again, plain words, so that I'm not stuck with a crazy overdraft fee and bank tricks that increase the odds that I'm going to have a problem. I want a car loan that doesn't have a hidden kickback to the dealer, like the average kickback now on a used car loan that runs between $1,000 and $3,800. Look, I expect to pay for what I get, but I don't expect to be tricked and trapped into paying what I didn't bargain for, because that's how contracts work and that's how markets work. And because this is what I want a consumer agency in Washington. I want a cop on the beat to make sure that there's a level playing field. It seems so obvious, so the question is, why is it not law? And the answer is, welcome to the wonderful world of Washington bank lobbies. The banking industry has a complexity machine, and the complexity machine is hard at work. The complexity machine actually started back in the 1980s. They did it with things like double cycle billing. Try reading that one in your credit card agreement sometime. Then they moved on to derivatives and credit default swaps. Complexity worked well. It made lots of profits. And now what they're doing is they're doing it in the fight against real reform. They want to make it all very complicated so only the experts can understand it. What this is really about is to give politicians plenty of cover for voting for the banks and not voting to make any real change. But this is really pretty simple. A consumer agency would make markets work for consumers and not just for banks. So I support a consumer agency for 2 reasons. The first is because I believe in contracts. Contracts represent agreements between 2 parties that lets each walk away happier. One of us got money and the other one got a computer, or it got a used car, or it got medical care, or it got whatever it wanted. Contracts support the invisible hand. They let the magic of the markets work. I've taught contract law for decades, and I love it. I love my students, and I love contract law. But the problem is that consumer financial products, credit cards, mortgages, payday loans, car loans, check overdraft, don't work like contracts are supposed to work. Check overdraft. You know what the average overdraft is? Someone who writes a check and they didn't quite get the math right on their checking account. Average overdraft is $17. Average overdraft fee in America right now, $34. So they charge you $34 to lend you $17 for 1 day. Good. Credit cards, double and triple interest rates, even for people who are paying on time, have done everything they're supposed to do. And that happened when? It happened over the last several months as those very same companies were borrowing from the American taxpayer at 0% interest. So 0% interest is what we lend it to the credit card companies for, and they lend it back to the American people at 28 and 29% interest. Heck of a model. Used car loans. How many people know that used car loans actually have hidden kickbacks? The person who places the loan, the guy who just cheerfully sold you the car, is the one who also gets a kickback from the lender where he steers you. And here's the key point. It's all there somewhere in the fine print. The consequence of this is customers, this isn't contract law, customers can't price this, customers aren't making this kind of trade. The invisible hand is withering and dying in the consumer credit market. So in 1980, let me give you a specific example of this. Bank of America's credit card agreement was 700 words. If you write big, that's a smidge over 1 page long. Their credit card contract today, 30 pages by the time you add up all the inserts, and 30 pages of dense, unreadable legalese. We got to get rid of that because markets can't work with it. Last week, the AARP came out with a survey. It's not a very controversial point. I have never seen a survey that comes out like this, and that is, do you think contracts, credit cards in particular, should be smaller and easier to read? Answer, 96%. Yeah. 4%, I'm not quite sure what happened. Here's the part I like the best. It was one of those strongly agree. 91% said strongly agree. Americans are tired of this. They understand the game and they don't like the game. Now there's a second reason that I'm pushing for a new consumer agency. It's because I believe in streamlined, accountable government. Consumer protection today is scattered among 7 different agencies in Washington. Whoops, that's not exactly the slide I had in mind, but we'll come to it. Scattered among 7 different agencies in Washington. The system is bloated, it's bureaucratic, and it's ineffective. It is much easier for big banks to capture consumer functions of an agency that doesn't really care. And here's an example of this. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, our principal regulator of federally chartered banks in Washington. Where does it get its money? Have you ever wondered where? You probably thought it came from Congress, from taxpayers. Nope. It comes from the banks they regulate. So think about what that means for a very large bank. It means you either write the regulations that I like, or I will simply become something else, like a federally chartered thrift. In other words, who has the power here? The power resides with the big banks, not with the bank regulators. There is no single agency in Washington with a primary mission to provide meaningful rules over the credit market. And as a result, there are no meaningful rules to make products clear, no cop on the beat to make products work. Now we have a Food and Drug Administration, we have a Consumer Product Safety Commission, we have an Environmental Protection Agency to represent the interests of everyone who buys a prescription drug, who buys a car seat for a baby, or who drinks water out of the tap. Those markets can work because of those agencies. But what we have in the case of consumer financial protection is a fractured and complex system for credit products that leaves families without recourse and that has helped bring our country to the edge of a financial collapse. So the complexity machine is hard at it. They like this system. 7 regulators, they don't want to see a single consumer regulator that regulates by products. The complexity machine wants to keep it all right where it is. They want fractured agencies that are easy to be able to capture because they are not the principal responsibility of anyone. Consumer is not what this is about. But I'm going to tell you something. It's a lot simpler than this. This is a dispute of families versus banks. It's not conservatives versus liberals. It's not something else. It's about families and it's about banks that sell them financial products. Banks are fighting to kill contracts and to kill consumer markets so that they can drive up short-term profits. Banks want to kill the consumer agency so that they can keep the fine print, so they can write all the rules, so that families don't quite get it until it's too late. The banks are fighting for a big, bloated, unaccountable, ineffective government because it works well for them. Remember, no cop on the beat works for the biggest bullies in town. But also remember, Congress is supposed to work for us, not for the bullies. So this is what's in the balance. It's families versus banks. Families know who caused this crisis. They are reeling from the economic effects and from the fact that they had to pony up for the bailouts for the same banks that brought us to the edge of this crisis and that are now lobbying to oppose any meaningful reforms for these very same families. Families are demanding change. That's 96% of the AARP respondents who want the banks to be reined in, who want two-page credit card agreements, who want a system that gives families a fighting chance to survive. As we learned today, there are a lot of important lessons that we learned from the Great Recession, but none is more important than the need to have meaningful rules of the market. And truly meaningful rules start one family at a time. Thank you.